My name is William, and the happiest day of my life was supposed to be my son's wedding day. I raised Michael as a single father after losing my wife 15 years ago. I did everything I could to make sure he grew up into a good man, honest, respectful, and kind. When he brought home his fiancée, Emily, I thought she was perfect for him. She was polite, charming, and always made sure to smile when I was around. But behind that smile, there was something I couldn't quite trust. I ignored my gut feeling, thinking I was just being overprotective, but I was wrong. On the day of the wedding, everything changed. I arrived early, proud and emotional, ready to walk my son down the aisle. I noticed Emily looked tense. Before I could say anything, she walked up to me, pretending to cry. Moments later, Michael stormed toward me, his face red with anger. "Dad, how could you?" he shouted. Everyone turned to look. I was confused. "What are you talking about?" I asked. Emily clung to his arm and sobbed. "He hit me. He slapped me because I asked him to move from the front row." My heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "That's a lie," I said calmly. But Michael wasn't listening. His voice trembled. "I can't believe you would ruin my wedding, Dad. Please, just leave." Everyone stared in silence. I took a deep breath, looked my son in the eye, and smiled sadly. "I'll leave, but only with you, son." The room went quiet. Then I pulled out my phone and said, "Let me show you something before I go." I pressed play, and suddenly the truth began to unfold. Everyone stood frozen as I took out my phone. My hands weren't shaking. I was calm, even though my heart felt heavy. I tapped the screen and played a video I had taken just that morning. The footage showed Emily standing with her bridesmaids near the entrance. She didn't know my phone had recorded from my jacket pocket. In the video, she laughed and said to one of the bridesmaids, "Watch this. I'll make him look like the villain. Michael's too emotional to think straight. If I tell him his dad hit me, he'll throw him out in front of everyone." Gasps filled the hall. My son's face turned pale. Emily screamed, "That's fake! He edited it!" But everyone had already seen it. The timestamp, the voices, everything was clear. Michael looked at me with tears in his eyes, realizing what she had done. "Dad, I didn't know," he said quietly. "I know, son. You trusted the wrong person. That's not your fault." But Emily wasn't ready to give up. "Michael, listen to me. He's trying to destroy us," she shouted, but her voice trembled. The guests started whispering. Michael slowly turned to her. "You lied about my father. On our wedding day," he asked. "Why, Emily? Why would you do that?" She froze, her eyes darting around. "Because you always put him first. I was tired of being second," she yelled. Her mask was gone. Every bit of sweetness she'd ever shown vanished in that moment. Michael took off his wedding ring and dropped it on the floor. "Then you'll never have to worry about being second again," he said. "This wedding is over." The guests erupted into murmurs. Some applauded quietly, others just stared. Emily ran out crying, but not many followed her. My son turned to me and hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry, Dad." "You have nothing to be sorry for, son," I said softly. "You just saw her true face before it was too late." Later that evening, when the guests had left, Michael and I sat together outside, under the stars. The air was cool, and the night was quiet except for the sound of crickets. "I can't believe she did that," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought she loved me." I sighed. "Some people love what they can get from you, not who you are," I told him. "You'll find someone who truly deserves you." He nodded, wiping his eyes. Then he smiled faintly. "I guess you were right about trusting your gut, huh?" I chuckled. "Yeah, but sometimes experience speaks louder than love." That night, I realized something important. It wasn't just about being a father. It was about being someone your child can return to even after being misled. And for me, that was enough. The next day, Michael called the venue and officially canceled everything. The photographer, the caterer, even the honeymoon trip. All gone. It wasn't the wedding day I had imagined, but in a strange way, it became the day I got my son back. A week passed after the wedding was canceled, but the shock still hung in the air like a heavy fog. My son, Michael, tried to go back to work, but he was quieter than usual. The news had spread quickly through town. Everyone knew what happened at the wedding. Some people called to express sympathy, others whispered behind our backs. I didn't care. I only cared about helping my son heal. One evening, as we sat having dinner, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, my heart sank. Emily was standing there. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair a mess. "William, please, I just need to talk to Michael," she pleaded. Michael stood up behind me, his face cold and unreadable. "You've said enough," he said. "Go home, Emily." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I thought if your dad was gone, you'd choose me completely." Her words stung me, but not because they were cruel, but because of how broken she sounded. Still, manipulation had been her weapon before, and I wasn't falling for it again. Michael took a deep breath. "Emily, love isn't about control," he said softly. "It's about trust, and you destroyed that." She sobbed harder, dropping to her knees. "Please, just give me another chance." But Michael turned away. "I already did," he said, and closed the door gently. She stayed outside crying for a while before finally leaving. For a few minutes, we stood in silence. I could see pain in my son's eyes. He wasn't heartless. He just knew that forgiveness didn't mean returning to what broke him. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "I will be." That night, I saw him take off his old engagement photo from the shelf and put it in a drawer. It felt symbolic, a quiet step toward letting go. A few days later, something unexpected happened. The wedding venue called and told us Emily's family was demanding their money back. Apparently, they claimed Michael canceled without a valid reason. That made my blood boil. "Without a valid reason?" I said. "She lied, humiliated my son, and tried to ruin me in front of everyone." But instead of fighting, Michael surprised me. He said calmly, "Let them have the money, Dad. I just want peace." I looked at him, proud. That was the moment I realized he had truly grown. The boy I raised had become a man, not because of what he gained, but because of what he refused to let break him. Later that month, I received a small envelope from Emily. It was a short letter. It said, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm getting help. I lost the best thing I ever had because I didn't know how to love right." I folded the letter and put it away without saying anything to Michael. Some things, I thought, are better left in the past. That night, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, Michael joined me with 2 cups of coffee. "You know, Dad," he said, smiling faintly, "that wedding day might have been the worst day of my life, but also the most important." I looked at him curious. "How's that?" He shrugged. "Because it showed me who's real and who's not, and it reminded me I still have you." I couldn't help but smile. "And you'll always have me, son." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt peace for the first time in months. Maybe life doesn't always go as planned, but sometimes the wreckage clears the path for something better. Months passed, and life slowly found its rhythm again. Michael started focusing on his career, throwing himself into work to keep his mind occupied. I could see the quiet strength growing in him, but also the loneliness. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear him sitting on the porch, just staring into the dark sky, lost in thought. I never disturbed him. Some wounds heal best in silence. One morning, he came into the kitchen, looking more determined than I'd seen him in a while. "Dad," he said, "I've been offered a position in Seattle. It's a big opportunity, project manager for a new tech firm." I smiled proudly. That's amazing, son. You deserve it. He hesitated. It's across the country. I'll have to move in a month. My heart sank a little, but I nodded. You have to go, Michael. Life doesn't wait for anyone. Go build something new. The following weeks were busy. Packing boxes, sorting things, planning his move. We spent long evenings talking about life, love, and everything in between. I told him about his mother, about the early days of our marriage, and how, even through pain, love never truly dies. It just changes shape. The night before his flight, we had dinner together. It was quiet, warm, and a little bittersweet. When it was time for him to leave, he hugged me tightly and whispered, "I wouldn't be who I am without you, Dad." I patted his back. Then I did something right. After he left, the house felt emptier now. The silence echoed differently. Not lonely, just peaceful. I spent my mornings in the garden and my evenings at the local community center, volunteering and meeting new people. It felt good to have a purpose again. One day, while helping at a charity event, I met a woman named Linda. She was kind, warm, and had a laugh that could brighten a whole room. She'd lost her husband years ago, too. We talked for hours that day, and something inside me stirred, a quiet reminder that life wasn't over yet. Weeks turned into months, and Linda became a regular part of my life. We'd go for morning walks, share stories about our families, and slowly she became more than a friend. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset, she said softly, "You have such a calm soul, William. I think your son must be proud of you." I smiled. I hope so. He's the reason I learned how to forgive. Meanwhile, Michael settled into his new job. We called often. He told me about his team, his projects, and one day about someone new. "Her name's Olivia," he said shyly. "She's smart, kind, and she doesn't play games." I laughed. "Sounds like you finally met your match." A year later, he brought her home for Thanksgiving. When they arrived, Linda and I were in the kitchen cooking. The moment Olivia met us, I saw the difference in Michael's eyes. This time, it wasn't confusion or desperation. It was peace. Over dinner, we all laughed, shared stories, and for the first time since that ruined wedding, I felt like everything had fallen into place. Before leaving, Michael pulled me aside. "You know, Dad," he said smiling, "if that wedding hadn't fallen apart, I never would have found this life." I nodded. "Sometimes, son, the worst days lead us to the best tomorrows." He hugged me, and I could feel the truth of those words deep in my chest. That night, as I watched them drive away, I looked up at the stars again, the same ones that had witnessed our pain months ago. But this time, they didn't feel cold. They felt like hope. Time moved gently after that Thanksgiving. Michael's life in Seattle was blossoming. His career, his relationship, everything seemed to fall into place. But life has a strange way of testing peace just when you start to feel safe. One rainy evening, about a year later, I got a call from an unknown number. "Mr. Harris?" the voice said. "This is St. Mary's Hospital. We have someone here who listed you as their emergency contact." My heart tightened. "Who is it?" I asked. The nurse paused. "It's Emily Carter." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "Emily? After all this time?" "She's stable now," the nurse continued, "but she asked to see you." I sat there for a while before deciding to go. Not because I owed her anything, but because closure matters. When I entered the hospital room, Emily looked fragile, pale, a shadow of the manipulative woman I once knew. She smiled weakly when she saw me. "You came," she whispered. "I didn't think you would." I nodded quietly. "I'm here." "What happened, Emily?" Her eyes filled with tears. I lost control of my life after the wedding. I moved to another city, tried to start over, but I kept making the same mistakes. I pushed everyone away.
Then, last week, I collapsed at work. The doctors say it's stress and something with my heart. Her voice cracked. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt something deeper. Sadness. She was still young, but life had already broken her spirit. Emily, I said softly, forgiveness isn't something you ask for. It's something you prove by changing. She nodded slowly. I know. I'm trying. Then she smiled faintly. Michael, is he happy? I nodded. Yes. He found someone who treats him right. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Good, she whispered. He deserves that. When I left the hospital, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, almost new. I didn't tell Michael right away. I wanted to protect his peace. But a few days later, when he visited, I decided to tell him. His face went blank for a second. She's sick? He asked quietly. Yes, I said. But she's trying to change. I think she's learned her lesson. He sat there for a while, staring at the floor. Then he said, maybe I should visit her. I looked at him with surprise. Are you sure? He nodded. Dad, you taught me something. Sometimes forgiveness isn't for the person who hurt you. It's for you. A week later, he went to see her. When he came back, he didn't say much, just that they talked for hours, about the past, about pain, about letting go. He told me she cried, and he forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because he wanted to move forward completely free. Months passed again. Emily eventually left the city, sent a short letter thanking us both for the chance to make peace, and disappeared quietly from our lives. It was strange. Her story started with destruction, but ended in quiet redemption. One evening, Michael called from Seattle. Dad, he said, his voice full of warmth, Olivia and I are getting married next spring. I want you to walk me down the aisle. I felt my throat tighten. Are you sure you want an old man stealing the spotlight? I joked. He laughed. You're not stealing it, Dad. You are it. The following months were full of excitement. Invitations, fittings, travel plans. It felt like déjà vu, but with peace instead of tension. When the day finally came, I stood beside my son, watching him marry the woman who truly loved him. As they exchanged vows, I glanced at the bright sky through the chapel window. Somewhere deep inside, I whispered a silent thank you to life for the lessons, the pain, and the second chances. When Michael and Olivia had their first dance, he looked over at me and smiled. It was a moment I'll never forget, because sometimes happiness doesn't come from perfect beginnings. It comes from surviving the storms and still choosing to love again.
The months after Michael and Olivia's wedding were some of the happiest days of my life. The ceremony had been small, but filled with warmth. No lies, no masks, just real love. Watching my son dance with his wife, seeing his eyes full of peace, I realized how far we'd all come. But life still had more to teach me. After the wedding, Michael and Olivia settled in Seattle permanently. They called me every Sunday, and sometimes Olivia would send little care packages, cookies, coffee beans, or books she thought I'd like. The house, once silent and heavy, now felt alive again. But one evening, as I sat reading on the porch, I felt a strange tightness in my chest. It wasn't sharp, just heavy. I brushed it off, thinking it was nothing, but the next day it came back stronger. Linda insisted we go to the doctor. The diagnosis was gentle but firm. Your heart's showing signs of strain, Mr. Harris. You need to slow down. I smiled. I've been slowing down for years. But deep down, I knew this was life reminding me that time is a gift. I didn't tell Michael right away. I didn't want him to worry, not now that he was finally happy. Instead, I focused on small joys, gardening with Linda, morning walks, evening coffee on the porch. Every day felt slower, quieter, more precious. One morning, I wrote a letter to Michael, just in case. It wasn't dramatic, just a father's words to his son. Life isn't measured by how much we have, but by who we become after losing it all. If you ever doubt yourself, remember, you've already survived the hardest part. I sealed it and placed it in my drawer, labeled simply, "For Michael." A few months later, Michael and Olivia came to visit. The moment I saw them step out of the car, I felt that familiar joy in my chest. Olivia was glowing. Turns out they had news. "Dad," Michael said, his voice shaking with emotion, "you're going to be a grandfather." I laughed so hard I almost cried. "Well," I said, "looks like my promotion came late in life." We spent the whole evening celebrating. Linda cooked her famous stew, and Olivia kept talking about baby names. For the first time in a long while, everything felt complete. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat outside under the stars again. The same sky that had watched us through heartbreak, forgiveness, and healing. I whispered quietly, "Thank you." I didn't know who I was thanking. Life, fate, maybe even my late wife. But I meant it. A year later, Michael called again, voice full of pride. "Dad, it's a boy. We named him William." I couldn't speak for a moment. My throat tightened and I felt tears well up. "You named him after me?" I asked softly. "Of course," Michael said. "You're the reason I know what real strength and love look like." When I finally met my grandson, holding that tiny bundle in my arms, I realized everything had come full circle. The pain, the loss, the betrayal, they had all been stepping stones leading here, to this perfect little moment of peace. As the baby slept against my chest, I thought of Emily, of all the broken paths that somehow led us here. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't hate anything. Life wasn't about holding grudges. It was about learning, forgiving, and loving anyway. And as I looked into my grandson's innocent face, I whispered, "You come from a long line of second chances, little one. Make yours count."
Years drifted by like pages in a quiet book. Michael and Olivia's son, little William, grew fast. By the time he was 5, he had my smile and his father's eyes. Every time they visited, the house came alive again, his laughter echoing through the halls like music. I'd sit on the porch swing with him on my lap, teaching him how to whistle, how to plant seeds, how to look at the stars and find shapes in them. "That one looks like a big bear," he'd say, pointing to the night sky. "That's right," I'd laugh. "And someday, when you're older, you'll find your own constellations." But with every year that passed, I could feel my body slowing down. My heart was weaker, and my energy faded faster. Linda noticed before anyone else. "You're getting tired more easily," she said softly one evening. "Promise me you'll tell Michael soon?" I smiled. "I will, just not yet. I want him to remember me strong." That night, when everyone had gone to bed, I took out my old wooden box, the one I'd kept since Michael was a baby. Inside were letters, photos, and a few mementos from our life together. I added one more thing, a sealed envelope with Michael's name on it, and another smaller one labeled, "For little William, to open when he's 18. Then I sat down and began to write. My dear grandson, by the time you read this, I may be somewhere else, hopefully sitting under a bigger sky, watching over you. I don't want you to remember me as old or sick. I want you to remember me as the man who taught you about stars, about growing things, and about never letting pain make you bitter. Life will test you. It will hurt you. But if you keep your heart kind, you'll always find your way back to light. You come from people who fell and got back up. That's your legacy, never stop rising. I sealed the letter and placed it gently in the box. Weeks later, my heart took a turn. It was a quiet afternoon. Linda was beside me, holding my hand as I rested on the porch swing, the same place where I'd once watched my son grow and later my grandson play. The air smelled like spring. I looked up at the sky, smiled, and whispered, "Thank you for everything." When Michael arrived a few hours later, I was gone, but peacefully, like I'd just fallen asleep watching the sunset. At my funeral, Michael read the letter I'd left him. Life isn't about what you lose. It's about who you become because of it. His voice broke as he read, but when he looked up, I know he smiled, because I could almost feel it, wherever I was. Years later, when little William turned 18, he opened his letter. By then, he was taller, wiser, and ready to understand the world. As he read his grandfather's words, he whispered, "I'll keep rising, Grandpa, just like you said." And under that same endless sky, where generations had laughed, cried, and healed, a new story quietly began.